let's get started. So we do have, it's 100 plus tips. And there are about 120 of them. So we're going to be moving pretty quickly. We will try to leave some time for questions at the end if we have time. So that's me. I am from FX Professional Services. And don't worry, I've never heard of me either. So we're going to start with layouts and layout mode. Easy one to begin with. So how many of y'all are familiar with merge symbols? Merge symbols are fantastically useful, right? You can start putting them on your layouts right now just by using the double mustache syntax. However, recently we got the page count merge symbol. How many of y'all remember before we had the page count merge symbol and we had to use unstored calcs and things like that, right? So this is our first tip. Know that this exists. Can anybody remember, I can't remember which version this was. Was it like 18 or more recent that this came out? I think it was even more recent than that. Copying layouts. If you are a developer, you need to port your code. You need to copy layouts. And sometimes this might seem obvious, but this is a very useful tip. If you are trying to copy a layout or a portion of a layout, you can Command-C, go to your target layout, swap into layout mode, and then immediately hit Command-V. If you do that, all of the layout objects will be pasted with the exact same XY coordinates that they had before. Very, very useful time-saving technique if you don't know this one. This can be used for copying an entire layout. If you're going to be copying an entire layout, make sure that you set the part sizes first. Or it can be used for copying any portion of a layout. Undo layout changes. Not everybody knows after you go into browse mode, you can still undo your changes. So after you make a change, hop into browse. As long as you don't go to too many other layouts or make too many significant changes, you can usually Command-Z a couple of times to get back to where you were. And you want to know that because of this one. How many of y'all have this currently turned on in your system? Does anybody? Yeah. I definitely recommend turning this off, especially because you can undo your changes afterwards. And as consultants, right, we're always trying to be efficient. For the consultants, right, trying to be efficient. We know we charge a lot, and we want to be making the most of our time. Uploading a directory of files. If anybody here using the developer tool? Anybody using the developer tool, the command line developer tool? Well, if you are, this is something that I didn't know, I just want to share with you. You can actually upload a directory of files. So if you have a 50-file solution that you're trying to use, you can point it at the directory and upload the whole thing. Slant has a great article on that. Customize your toolbars. Customize your toolbars. As developers, you probably want to get to data viewer and debugger pretty more often than you need some of the other commands that you're going to see up there, right? So this works on Mac and Windows. Please make sure that you go in and you can update your toolbar, put all kinds of things on there. Script debugger. You can also put manage, so you can get to manage database, manage scripts, layouts, all of that stuff from right up there. Works in layout mode and browse. Customize script step colors. Not everybody knows this, just wanted to point it out, especially if you're using dark mode, you definitely want to know about this. You want to be able to customize your colors if you have, so that you can see them, especially against the dark backgrounds. Number 8, script step compatibility toggle. Okay. So FileMaker is fantastic because it works in all kinds of different environments, right? However, they don't always work exactly the same. And sometimes it's useful to know which script steps are supported in which environments. How many of y'all use this toggle? Okay, most of us, excellent. Now, this toggle is actually super useful because it will tell you what isn't working. But I also want to point out this. This little button, this little magical question mark that you see in the bottom right hand of your scripts workspace, tremendously valuable for consultants. Why? Because as consultants, you're working on a lot of different files for a lot of different customers, and they might be using different versions of FileMaker. This button will take you to the correct version of the file that you're working on so that you can see the current help doc for that script step. This also works for calculations. So definitely super useful. It's the fastest way to get to what you're looking for. Reset dialog box locations. This is just niche edge case. If you end up having a really large error dialog or drag it off screen, need to reset it, there is an option here for you here in settings. It's not the only way, but it's just good to know. And error handling. So when we talk about error handling, we're primarily talking about scripts. So I'm trying to set a field, the field set fails because the record's locked or something like that, right? So how do we actually handle that error? What I tell my devs is to try to achieve these three things, right? The first is not optional, that is a requirement. You must maintain data integrity. So if the data that they're trying to input is invalid, I can't allow that to happen. I have to first revert the change, stop any invalid data from getting into my system. Does that make sense to everybody? I think we all agree on that? Yeah, okay. Now the second thing and the third thing are really just about how I craft the error message, but they really do make a difference in user experience, right? So first I want to try to communicate the problem. I was unable to set that field because the record is locked. And when possible, not always, but when possible, try to communicate the solution. Please contact such and so, they have the record locked, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Okay. Replace getLastError. So getLastError, phenomenal, we all use it. However, having a number is useful. Having a great deal more information about the user's environment, their system, this call stack that they were in, all of that can be achieved by simply replacing getLastError with a custom function that will record a bunch of information. Now you can see it kind of there in the GIF. You can see we're recording what windows they had open, what's their IP address, what version are they on, what extended privileges do they have, what file were they in. All of that is captured with every error so that when we go through our debugging, we have a ton of more information for us. I'm not lying when I say 80 to 90% of the time, just looking at the error is going to tell us what we need to know. Pardon me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. If you look down at the bottom of that, you should see that trace object. And that is, let me just go to that real quick. You should see that trace object. That trace object is a call trace, okay? So when the error is traveling its way back up the call stack, it's tracking which script called which script called which script, in what window, with what parameter. As such, 80% of errors are just going to be captured inside of this, right? Because that's where a lot of errors come from. Oh, the script didn't return this right thing, and the next script therefore couldn't carry on, right? So definitely recommend. Now we are not FX. We do have our own framework and our own functions that you can steal from us. Soliant has some. The Clue technique by Marcelo Pinheiro has very configurable options. So we're not the only people to do this, but I highly, highly recommend replace getLastError with a custom function. Logical script steps do not clear errors, right? This is really important to know. So if, else, exit script will never clear an error. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah, okay. So now the reason that that's important is because, firstly, you want to make sure that you can efficiently handle your errors, but it also actually applies to the next step, which is, and I don't know if everybody has experienced this or knows this, but this also works server-side, right? So PSOS, all of those things still return errors as long as they don't encounter anything but a logical script step on their way out. You can still capture that error just like any other error that's happening locally on your machine. FileMaker error handling behavior is pretty consistent in that way. Sometimes you need to leave error capture off. As devs, what's one of the first things we put in our script? Set error capture on, allow user abort off, right? And don't even think about it. It's just as easy as breathing. But unfortunately, there are some times where if you do that, you will not understand why the customer can't seem to solve their problem, right? If you set error capture on, dialog boxes that will invite them to solve the problem, such as to sign into the file that you're trying to do or sign into the external data source, those dialog boxes will not show if error capture is on. So while it's a good idea generally to leave that on, there are some times where you don't want to do that. Is that making sense? Yeah? Okay. All right. Scripting. Okay, so now some of these we're going to go through pretty quickly. Some of these we're going to spend a little bit more time on. This one I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. Okay, so variables in memory remain when the script resumes. So what you're seeing on the right here is a demonstration of a picker. And it's a modular piece of code that we use. It's a modular piece of code that we use whenever we're trying to select records and put them into another part of the system. Now, what you'll see is that the dialog opens, and then I pause and allow the user to do whatever they want. They can search, they can filter. I am constraining their found set so that I'm ensuring that they're only seeing certain records. But what you need to know is how the pause influences this, right? So while I'm paused, all of the variables that were in memory are still there. You can think of it kind of like a JavaScript closure. Once that opens up, until that completes, all of those variables are still in memory. And that means that not only can I use them, as you can see on tip number 17, I can use these as inputs on buttons on the layout that would have no value unless the script was paused. Does as you can see, right? But I can also, in tip number 18, I can reference these directly on the layout. So you can see those are not global variables. Those are local variables. Now, why is that going to be better? A global variable is going to conflict. I can't have 2, 3, 4, 10 of these windows open. I can't have one window open another window if they're global variables. But because local variables are scoped to the window, I can have as many of them as I want. I can recursively go down the rabbit hole and come right back up without any problems. Does that make sense? Yeah, so local variables can be referenced, but I want to point out this only works in a pause. This only works in a pause. Okay, duplicating versus copying scripts. It might seem like pretty much the same thing, but they're actually quite different. So if you select a group of scripts and you duplicate, it will give you a direct set of copies. That's it, right? So if I have two scripts that reference each other, and I duplicate those two scripts, say this script references this one, when I duplicate these, this script will still reference the first one, right? Generally, that's not what you want. However, if you copy instead of duplicate, so if I take these two scripts and I copy them and then paste them back in, the pasted copies will reference each other exactly as you would expect. So depending on what you're trying to do, say that you're trying to make a new module, maybe you do want to duplicate so that everything is pointed to what it was originally. But if you are trying to like port or something like that and you want the code to reference each other, copy all of the scripts that should reference each other, paste them in, and they're all going to talk to each other automatically. Make sense? Cool. Cross-file script launching. So not everybody knows this. If you guys use indirection, you guys use indirection? I know, it's a safe space, you can admit it. Yeah. Anybody? No? I love indirection. I'm a huge fan. I might be alone on that. But if you are using indirection, one of the things that you might run into, and when I say indirection, I'm talking about performing scripts by name, setting fields by name, those kinds of things. Those can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But what I want to just make sure everybody knows, we can use indirection to launch scripts in other files as well. The way that we do that is by putting the data source name first, : and then the script name, and then we can launch scripts in other files using indirection. This isn't the documentation, but not everybody always sees that. Just want to share that. Now, also notice we're using the DSN, the data source name, not the file name. Not the file name. Okay, you can also use this trick. You can also use this trick to dynamically open a data source. So say that I've got a data source that I'm trying to open. Remember that this is not the same as open file, right? So I can open a file and the file will be open, but is that going to open it as a data source of this file? Generally not, right? In order for this to be opened as a data source, it has to be activated inside of this. So what we can do is we can use indirection to call a script that doesn't exist in that file. FileMaker can't tell you that it doesn't exist until it opens the file, right? So it will force, as long as you have error capture off, it will force the login, it will pop up, it'll let you sign in, you put in your credentials, then it will tell you that the script can't be found. So if you are trying to dynamically launch a data source or dynamically open files, like we do in one of our unit testing tools, this is a technique that you should know. And as I said, it will still work even if the script doesn't exist. Oh yes, okay. So this one, I hope I'm going to get some interest on this one. Okay. So use on-record load to send notifications from FMS to clients. This was a technique that Brendan McBride, one of the senior devs at DB Services, shared with me. I want to share with you all. So one of the circumstances that you'll run into is there might be a server that, for instance, receives a notification or a webhook or a something. And now I need all of my clients to be notified of that. So I've got a FileMaker user sitting in front of their machine. They need a call just came in. Server just got a call or a Skype message or a PBX call or something. And I need a pop-up to show up on my user's screen. And I want to do this with native FileMaker, just with what I've got. How can I do that? Well, you can use the on-record load behavior. So what I can do is I can have the user who's supposed to be listening for that notification go to a specific record and wait. Just in a hidden window, they can be sitting there with that. Now, when the server deletes that record, it will cause the on-record load script to run, even though they're now in a found set of 0. Still works. So in that found set of 0, they can recreate that notification record, and all of the people, all of the users, if I could have 10, 20, 100, all of them were looking at that, all of them are going to run that on-record load script as soon as the server deletes that record. Now I say as soon as, that's not actually true. Of course, it follows the script stack, so it's going to add that down to the bottom. You don't have to worry about it interrupting anything that's going on. If you have a long-running process, it'll just pop in at the bottom. But this is a really, really useful trick. If you want to have like a screen pop that shows up when the phone rings, this is a really great way to do it with just native old FileMaker. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Use this to send notifications. We've also used this for instance, we have a whole bunch of people looking at a big complex dashboard. We want to refresh it as things happen, but we don't want to, we want to do it kind of under the hood, and we don't want to have it on a timer, right? So what we can do is we can make it so that anytime something changes, the server just notifies everybody, and just in the background, they do a quick refresh. Okay. So this super useful technique, hope to see more of that. Refreshing single relationships. We all know refresh window, we all know that, but it's also kind of heavy, right? If you're trying to just refresh one thing, especially if it's several relationships deep, you can do that just by setting a single field. It's in the documentation, but every time that you set a predicate field in a relationship, the entire relationship must refresh. And so you can use that to your advantage. If I've got a parent and a child relationship, if I just set the parent's ID to itself, it will force the child relationship to reevaluate. Does that make sense? Cool. So setting any single field as a relationship predicate will cause the entire relationship to refresh. Exporting binary files. This is something that's recent, so I just wanted to point this out. In the past, we had to use plugins and things like that if we wanted to export binary files from the server. But I wanted to point out, with the new write to data file, we don't have to do that, right? The write to data file script steps can be used to write out any file type. So I can put something into a container and then write it out byte by byte into the drive, right? This is also going to be important when we're starting to use insert from URL to download large files, okay? So in the past, we had to use containers for this. Within the last couple of years, we got the ability to download directly into variables. And that's really important because containers have a 4 GB limit. If you had a big file, you would really struggle to download that, right? So now you can download directly into the variable using insert from URL, and then use your export or use your write to data file to write that massive file out to the drive without ever having to touch the container. Does that make sense? Cool. Delete records works on portal rows. We all knew that, right? Everybody? Yeah. Delete record works on portal rows. Now, delete record works on portal rows, and this can actually save, the reason that I point this out is a lot of times we as devs are just making quick systems for ourselves, right? Oh, we just make a quick little demo or something like that, and we think that we have to put delete portal rows or those little buttons on every row. We don't. You can click there, hit the delete button, and as long as hit the regular delete record, and as long as this is enabled, you'll be able to delete related records as well. If you want to end that behavior, you can see the dialog here under 27. You can stop that. And bear in mind that regardless of what you set here, delete portal row, the script step will always work. But that is distinct from delete record. Duplicate portal rows also is a thing. That is less common, but it's actually a really, really important technique. So if you want to, for instance, duplicate a parent record and all of its related children without ever leaving your current layout, one way that you would do that is you would loop through all of the portals, duplicate each of the records, set a new ID into it, duplicate the parent record, and then set that ID to match the one that you just put into all of the children. Then in one transaction, without ever leaving the layout. Now, we can leave layouts now. Thank God, with our and keep things transactional. But we can do it without ever leaving the layout, without ever refreshing anything, just right there. So duplicate portal rows is a useful technique. 2 things to know about it, that it requires that you have a create relationship. That means that if you don't want that behavior to work, you can also just turn off the create relationship. And this is actually important because sometimes your users will do this and may not know. Not mentioning any names here, but we have we have done some troubleshooting in the past and been unable to find out why aren't these transactions balancing? Where is this extra inventory coming from? Well, turns out users were duplicating portal rows and was completely throwing off our transaction system. So just bear in mind that that's a thing. Don't let your users use it unless you know what you're doing. So script step requirements, this is really just something that is just useful to know. Anything that has the word insert in front of it requires the layout object on the field, with the single exception of insert text and insert calculated result when you're inserting into a variable. So all of these scripts, insert file, insert from device, insert from index, sometimes these are distinct from their counterparts like set field. Set field does not require that the layout is on the screen, but anything with the word insert is going to require that. So if you're confused, that's just a useful reference. I know this used to be on the old Developer Essentials test, but I don't know if this is on the later ones. So yeah. This used to be a gimme on that one. The single pass try-catch loop. So I think a lot of us are doing this now, but in case you're not, just wanted to point this out. Basically, this is a really useful construct for handling your errors because it allows you to handle your errors in one spot. You can see that I have multiple places where my loop can exit, but all of them will land at the single error handler at the bottom. Now, why is that better? If you want to do really comprehensive error handling, you're going to have error traps on like almost every other line, right? And you don't want to have to duplicate your entire error trap 50 times in your script. So what we do, put it all in a loop, exit once, go down, handle the error one time. Okay? Okay. So this is going to get nerdy. This is going to get nerdy. This is your warning. All right. So insert steps don't redeclare underlying variables. They only resize it. Now, we as developers are probably familiar with the immutability of strings and the fact that whenever you modify a string, it has to be, the entire variable has to be redeclared. So imagine that you are trying to build a string of every ID in a found set of 100,000 records. Okay? I have the first one, I add another, it takes all of that memory, wipes it out, and adds just one piece to it and declares a whole new block in memory, right? So by the time I'm doing that 50, 100,000 times, to add that last one, I still have to redeclare, clear all of that memory, put it somewhere else, and declare a whole new block just to add one item to it. There is a way around this. So the insert steps actually don't do this. Okay? The insert text, insert calculated result do not redeclare the underlying variable. And I know you don't believe me. I didn't believe me either. But it turns out that people much smarter than me have figured this out. I think Wim Decor is actually the person who found it in the error logs that it was actually trying to resize the underlying variable. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense. Set variable, if you just redeclare it, you could be changing any part in the string. And so it can't. It has to redeclare the entire variable. But if you're using insert, because insert only inserts at the end, it's actually not that difficult, right? You can just make a linked list that will expand over time, and it doesn't make any difference. So if you are trying to make an incredibly large set and things are slowing down as you get to adding the 150,000th record, right? Do it this way instead. You're going to save a lot of time. And you'll notice that the performance is actually really important here. So set variable, you can see the performance starts out pretty good, but then it gets really bad and it continues to get worse. Whereas we get linear performance if you take a look at the bottom one down there. Test with insert calculated result, okay? And if you take a look at those numbers, it's actually more impressive than you realize. You can see that we're topping out on the quadratic. We're at over 150,000, whereas down here we're at 6. So check the y-axis on that, and you'll be very impressed. So this is just a useful technique that I've not seen too many people referencing, so I wanted to share with you. Script step type ahead is a thing. It's really, really useful. I highly recommend you use it. That's really all there is to say about that. It also works for functions. Oh, actually, I think that's a later tip. AWS Signature 4. How much fun was that? Wasn't that great? Well, now we have the curl command to make that faster. If you guys are using AWS, which I'm sure many of you are, definitely recommend you use it. Significantly speeds things up. Want to make sure you know about that. All right. Let's talk about security. So how many of us use custom privileges? Okay, lots of hands, lots of hands. All right. So custom privileges exist. You should know about this. They're very, very useful. You can use them in your system. But one of the reasons that a lot of consultancies, a lot of professional developers have not used them is that they were not customizable. If I set custom permissions for you, or if we wanted to change that, you would have to call the developer to do that. And so many consultants ended up building entirely configurable systems that do basically the same thing. However, in recent versions of FileMaker, we now have the ability to allow certain users to manage the extended privileges of others. So you can take advantage of what FileMaker gives you and just use those wonderful extended privileges that are just already built for you. Doing this doesn't affect, as you can see, those two checkboxes are the ones that matter. That will allow them to administer non-full access accounts and also manage extended privileges. So if they get a new user, oh, you need to be able to add invoices now? Okay, let me give you that extended privilege. Doesn't require a developer. Okay. You can also give non-developers access to layout mode. I've seen this done only a handful of times in my career, and I think it's a really great technique. I just want to make sure people know about it. So what does this mean? If you've got a system, you've got a customer who needs label printing, who needs photography, who needs catalogs, who needs things like that, you can, in addition to doing what you do, you could give them access to layout mode. Let them build their own layout, right, with their own data. Give them access to it. You can choose which. You can give them the ability to create layouts without giving them the ability to modify existing ones, and then they can build their own print forms. You can build their own, or they can build their own print labels, their own catalog layouts, that kind of stuff. And I've seen this done really effectively for photo shoots, label printing, and things like that. So I just want to let you know, this is something that you can do. It saves you a lot of time, and this is part of FileMaker, right? Layout mode is part of FileMaker, and that UI is a great feature for your users. It doesn't require a ton of effort, and you can ship something really cool with that. Okay. You can reset the file UUID in security. Just want to make sure you know this. So when you start linking external files, they do not go by name, and this can be very confusing. So if you take two files and you duplicate them, they still have the same internal UUID, and if you try to add them as external providers, those two files will be recognized as the same thing, even though they have different names. So if you want to avoid that, or you need files to be different, duplicating them will keep the same UUID, but you can always go in here and click this button. It doesn't really tell you what it's going to do. Let me go back. Oh, sorry. Oh, we're going back. That's not the right one. Oh, that is the right one. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I want to believe. OK. So yes, so here where it says reset all, which does not tell you anything, that is actually going to reset the UUID of the file itself. And so now this will be considered a distinct file for security purposes if you're using it as external data sources or things like that. Okay, you can disable the creation of other databases. If you are a vertical, you want people to be primarily using your system, just want you to know that this is a thing that you can do. You can also set this using the assisted install text so that you don't have to set it up manually for everybody. And you can also force FileMaker to open your app on startup to give it a nice sort of white label experience as well. Okay, WebViewer. How many of y'all use WebViewers? How many of y'all HTML, CSS, JavaScript? We got some web folks? Cool. All right. So WebViewer caching, just something to know. WebViewer is caching your records, or is caching data at the record level. So use that to your advantage, right? Once a record has been loaded and cached, don't reload it until you need to, and take advantage of this really great behavior of the WebViewer. There are two ways of setting up the WebViewer: the right one and the wrong one. So this is what I would consider the wrong one. And I'm saying that sort of hyperbolically. But basically, this is the most common one that we see a lot, right? Where we've got a script that's going to shove some HTML into the web viewer, or perform a script inside of it, or do something like that. Now that works, but it's subject to a bunch of delays. I have to wait for the record to load. I have to wait for the FileMaker object to load. I have to wait for all the script engine to kick in. I have to all of that, right? So this is not really the most efficient, and it's also not a great developer experience. If you are trying to build a complex web application, do you want to do it and then have to like script it and paste the insert text into the thing? It's not a great experience, right? So what can we do instead? You can use local files to build scalable web apps right inside of a web viewer with no server, no framework, and no dependencies. All you need to do in order to do that is, for my developer folks out there that are doing this, if you tried to do this locally, you might have run into problems, right? When you try to import, if you build your JavaScript, or let me back up just a little bit. If you do this, I would recommend that you use single file components to build your web user interface. Single file components can be done, again, without a server, without a framework, without any of that, just using native JavaScript. JavaScript does allow you to do web components, and you can create separate files to describe a search bar, a user form, or whatever. Just real web development, right? That works. However, if you try to do this in a web viewer, the way that you see it online, the way everybody else does it, it will not work. And that is because you can't import or use module syntax inside of the web viewer. But once you know that, you can easily work around it. So what you'll see here is rather than importing each of these JavaScript components as a module, we just import it old school, JavaScript script style, right? It's a blocking import, but it works just fine. And then we can put all of our stuff in separate files. We can build using Visual Studio Code. We can have Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever we want to help us build these components. And our development experience is identical to what we would expect on the web. And again, this works. No server, no dependencies, no compilation, no transpilation, nothing. If you want to know more about that, definitely talk to me later. But first, probably learn about CORS. What is CORS? CORS is the reason that your web viewer cannot seem to fetch data. CORS stands for cross-origin resource sharing. If you are trying to use a web viewer to access your FileMaker server through the data API, it will not work, and this is why. There are a couple of ways that you can get around that. One is to write some backend code like a proxy. Another is to modify your server. So you can get your data API to send data out, but that's to send data out to anywhere. It's not the most secure method. But the method that I recommend and that I don't see a ton of people using is just use the client. Use the client. Insert from URL counts as backend. It's not subject to CORS. You can do whatever you want with it. So if you're getting blocked by CORS, just use insert from URL inside of FileMaker itself. Make sense? All right, scripting. So scripting, JSON structures in global variables are actually a really, really good way to have interactive data elements. So if I go back here, you can see this gigantic JSON object is actually describing a menu. And it describes the different buttons that are on that menu, the different scripts that would be run on that menu. And when my layout loads, this is what actually actuates that whole thing. Now, the nice thing about this is that because this is a global variable, if I want to change the menu, I just change the global variable and refresh the page. All of the menus update. Make sense? Cool. Global variables are stored as rich text. Anybody know that? Global variables are stored as rich text. So I found this out one day because I was trying to do something silly, but this is good to know. If you want a button, for instance, to just change color, and you have that referencing a global variable, you can use the text color function, and that will actually be reflected inside of the global variable. The only thing to remember is that as soon as you edit it, it goes away. So as soon as you open that in Data Viewer and then save that change back, it loses all the formatting. So don't do that, and you should be fine. But this is actually a useful technique if you want to have, I don't know, italics or bold or colored buttons or whatever it is on screen or text. Know that these are actually stored as rich text, and you can do that. Obviously, JSON is not rich text, so you can't do it with that. Transactions can be paused. That's all I got. I just want you to know. So transactions can be paused. Not everybody uses pause. How do we feel about pauses generally? I've had very strong opinions from consultants over the years about whether we should or shouldn't use pause. Who says no pause ever? No pause ever, no pause ever. Who says maybe pause sometimes? And who is all in on pause? Oh yeah, oh yeah. So, there's varying opinions on this, and there's good reasons on both sides. The reason that I like pauses is because they do allow your scripts to stay kind of modular, right? So for instance, the picker script that we talked about before, if that didn't use a pause, I would have to write a new script for every different place I wanted to use it. Right? When I save, it would be writing back to a different place every time. Whereas if I keep it modular and I use a pause, I can use it anywhere. I can invoke the picker, it returns a JSON result, which then I can do with whatever I want. And it doesn't really care. I can call it in the middle of another script. I can call it in the middle of another process, anywhere. And it's always going to work. And it's not even going to break my script call stack. So pauses can be really, really valuable if you're creative about how you use them. And they can keep your code much more modular. So I have lots of thoughts about this. But transactions specifically can be paused. And that's useful to know. Because if I can open a transaction, let the user do all kinds of data entry. And I can hold that transaction open for as long as I need, right? And at any point I can revert it. They can go places, they can do things, they can live their life in FileMaker, and I don't have to keep them on the same layout like I used to before we had these transaction script steps. But of course, that only works if they can be paused. And now you know. Okay, so use onCommit triggers to stop users from entering invalid data. How many of y'all use this trick? It's a good one, right? So because script triggers can be canceled, or wait, because we can cancel the underlying operation if we exit with false, what this script is actually doing is, because the data here is invalid, it's not allowing the save to go through. Okay? Even though they try to commit the record, because this exits with false, the commit never happens. I can revert this and it's like nothing ever happened. Okay? This is really, really important to give a good user experience and to make sure that nobody, to give a good user experience, but also to follow our first rule of error capture, right? Maintain data integrity. We can't let them put invalid data in our system because it's too difficult to get back out. Okay, so onCommit trigger is one of those examples, but there are lots of triggers that can be canceled. If you want to see, they're in the documentation of which specific actions can be canceled. Exiting with false will stop the underlying event, so use that to your advantage. Okay, you can set your starting layout in options rather than scripting it. Obvious. Just a good thing to remember, right? We all generally have a startup script. We're used to establishing our context in that startup script, but that is actually a lot less explicable and a lot more work than this. It also has some performance implications and overhead and things like that. If you don't script that, you could be opening to a different layout than you intended. This will ensure that you're always opening to a quick layout that's not going to have nonsense on it, and it requires no scripting. So definitely want to use that as much as we can. XML. Show of hands, how many of you have done XSLT imports into FileMaker? Oh, ye few but faithful. That was just a curious thing. If you guys have taken a look at the new save a copy as XML, you guys have probably seen it does have mod information for every single element in your system. That's tremendously valuable. I'm sure we all just want to take a moment and just clap for that, right? Like, how long have we wanted this? So we have mod data on every single element. Use that to your advantage. We have a tool that will allow you to see that. You can see it in the XML. I believe FM Comparison and a variety of other tools now have that. And I think we're releasing a free version for our website that you can check out as well. Now, this new XML can also be diffed. However, you can't just use a straight up text diff. You have to use something a little bit more comprehensive like FM Comparison or Yoink, one of our tools. And the reason for that is that Claris is not going to guarantee that all of the elements will be spit out in the same order every time. So some minor changes might happen, and that's going to screw up your diff. But this can be diffed, and we can use this for some interesting things. You should also know that you can actually use FileMaker to import the XSLT from, or to import the XML from FileMaker. So this is this is an earlier version of our product called Yoink, and you can see we are using XSLT to import the XML to now analyze all of the elements in that file, right? So use FileMaker to manage FileMaker, just a thing that you can do. It's not fun, but it is possible. XSLT is kind of tricky sometimes. How many of you know about the upgrade tool? This is not the migration tool. Oh, come on, raise your hands high. Raise your hands high. If you know about this, you should be proud. Yeah? Okay, so the upgrade tool is a thing. The upgrade tool is amazing, and it is not the same as the data migration tool. So the upgrade tool will allow you to apply patches to files. Yes, the upgrade tool will allow you to apply patches to files. So what that means is I can export an XML file that describes changes that I want to make to my system, and the upgrade tool will apply those. Now, the upgrade tool is still in beta. We're still working on it. It's not completely finished. But we do expect, but it is out there. It has been, the documents have been out on the web for the last 4 to 5 years already. We have been working on this for a long time, and we expect that the tool is soon going to be ready to actually start generating patches that will allow you to modify all components of the system. Currently, it only allows you to do things like layout objects and a couple of modest things, but we do have, we expect that to change soon. So if you're not familiar with the upgrade tool, go ahead and Google it, Claris upgrade tool. You'll see the documentation. It's available for you now. Please know about this. Please know about this. If you have a vertical, this is going to change everything once we get this going, so please definitely get up on that.
So is there a tool that generates a diff?
Yes, we built one. But there is not one provided by FileMaker right now. It's a good question. So his question was, is there a way to generate the diff? Like, does FileMaker do that for you? They don't.
Could be the patch.
Yeah, they don't. No, they don't. But we are building, we have, Come on now.
You can't build a patch.
Oh, no, FileMaker will not. But we actually do have a tool that generates patches. So we're waiting on the tool to be complete. As soon as the tool is complete, we'll be able to release our companion with it, which will diff2 files, generate a patch for you, take you from version 1 to version 2. But yeah, that is, and while FileMaker is not providing that, that works great for me. I'm happy to provide that for you. So, all right, let's talk about performance. So this is probably one of the earlier, like everybody I think knows this, but it's really, really good to remember. If you're going to a heavy layout, just enter find mode first, right? If you don't go to the layout and then do the find, because if I do, every single time I go to that layout, it has to load every single record that has any visible data on the screen, right? It has to load the current record, the found set data, and possibly up to 25 records in either direction from where I'm at in my found set. So enter find mode first, and you don't have to do any of that. Enter find mode, go to the layout, then execute your find. I think we all know that, but it's.
When we say new window, we can't tell it to just be in find mode automatically.
You know what? Where's Clay? Where's Clay?
Also avoid script triggers.
Also avoid script. Yes, right. So, OK. Use write to data file instead of text encode. This, I think it was, I can't even remember, it was some article about HTML emails and things like that. But this is just a useful trick to know. If you're trying to encode a huge text file and you use the text encode function, it's going to take a while. But if you just write it out to data file, it's actually significantly faster for some reason. So if you're trying to encode massive files, just write them out. It's going to be much faster than trying to use text encode. And number 58, custom CSS is way worse than you think. However bad you think it is, it's probably worse. Yeah, it's terrible. So what is custom CSS? Basically, it means if you're not using styles. So if you have a layout where elements on it are not using a style, meaning you have CSS applied specifically to that element, and maybe you have that same CSS copied 50, 60, 100 times to all of the different layout elements on there, each of those has its own CSS payload that must be sent across the wire before that thing can be shown. The overwhelming majority of your traffic is not data. It is layouts. It is CSS, right? That is overwhelmingly the majority of your traffic. And that blew my mind when I realized that, right? So how can you avoid this? Use styles. Use styles. Don't use CSS. Or don't use custom CSS. Use styles on every element. Make sure that every element has a style saved for it. And then that style will be reused, and you're not downloading that CSS over and over again every time you're trying to display that element. So I just want to point out, you might not realize it, but it is accounting for the majority of your network traffic is just styles. OK, this is just a good hierarchy to remember. This is kind of a three-pointer. This is all under 59. If you're trying to make something faster, you want to remember this hierarchy, right? Scripting in memory is faster than hitting the cache. Hitting the cache is faster than hitting a local database. And hitting a local database is faster than hitting a remote one. So almost every time I've tried to optimize a process, just following these rules has gotten me 80% where I need to go, right? The more that I can script in memory, the faster things are going to be. The less that I'm interacting and writing back to the database, the faster things are going to be. The more that I can rely on my cache, the faster things are going to be. And so just so we all understand, to make sure we're all on the same page, FileMaker does not FileMaker always writes to its cache. FileMaker always reads from its cache, always, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're on the client or the server. That's just how it works. So everything that you're talking about has to be read into the cache first. And if it's there, that's going to be much faster. We want to hit that as much as possible. So just bear that in mind. Use the cache, hit your local database, and script in memory as much as possible without touching the database until you're ready. Data structures. We're at 60 and 40 minutes. We've got 20 minutes. I should probably speed up. OK, recursive relationships. This is just something that people have needed to do. I just want to show you how it's done. I've got an item that has an item that can be another item that has its own items, right? So this recursive relationship, this is just a really straightforward way of setting it up. You have child, or you have parent with the join, and then to the other parent. You can see those three relationships down there. And you can see in the JSON object on the right here, this is kind of what that looks like. So use this slide as a reference if you ever need to. You're trying to do this. You just add you can follow these steps. So add a relationship between parent and child, add a field to summarize the data as JSON, and have that field reference the same field on the related child. Do that, and you have an infinite, or you have a recursive relationship. Please check for infinite recursion. Data separation. Separating the UI and logic can make your applications more modular, but I also want to point out, it does not make your applications faster. Splitting files does not, by nature, make your files faster, but it does give you a better development experience in many ways, with one exception. FM hydration, and I have never heard anybody talk about this, and this is something I had to do once, and it worked really well. I want to share with you. So, because the overwhelming majority of your traffic is layouts and logic and that kind of thing, what if we could just skip all of that? What if that never had to be downloaded over the WAN? So what you can do is you can split your file in the same way that you would using UI and logic in one and data in another. But here's the difference. You send the UI file to users to open locally. They run that file locally, and it still connects to the hosted database file, right, as its data. What does this do? This simulates more like a JS web app where you download all of your content and you're hitting the data, but all of your UI and your interaction is really fast and speedy because it doesn't have to go over the WAN at all. It's all just processed locally. Does that make sense? This is a super useful technique if you're trying to speed things up. I had a circumstance where I was working on a rented server and I had to make an application work and it had to bounce through 2 VPNs across the world in France and all kinds of stuff. And with this technique, we were actually still able to make it a relatively performant application. So if you're struggling with that, this will cut out most of the traffic that's going to your server, and you're only just talking about data at this point. Very, very fast. Get around loading an entire record. So remember how I said anything that we're going to show on the screen, we have to load the entire record? This is something that's been around for a while. If I have one field from a person record showing, FileMaker has to load that entire person record. It doesn't have the option to load just a single part. So if you have a really wide table with 50, 60 fields in it or something, right? All of those have to get loaded. Except you can use this as a workaround for that. So say that I've got a master detail, I've got 100 customers in a list, and I don't want to have to load 100 customers in order to show 100 customer names. Well, as long as those customer names are unique, I can use the popover behavior to basically create a UUID with their name on it. And now when I load that layout, none of those records get loaded. None of them. The value list gets loaded, but only the value list. Okay? So I don't know if, I don't know how many people know this, but this is good to know. I've done this in my own testing, and but it does break if you don't have unique names. That's the one thing. If I have two elements in there that they would have different UUIDs, but they might have the same name, it's going to show the UUID, which is not a great user experience. So just make sure that whatever field you are showing is unique, and this trick will work beautifully for you, and it will allow you to show a lot more data without having to load a bunch of records. Unstored value lists are a thing. They've been a thing for a long time. FileMaker, like when you do it, it says that it won't work, but I promise you it will. And you can find lots of details about that online. Just wanted to let you know that's a thing. Unstored value list just basically means I need a user to select from something, but I don't know ahead of time what it is. I need to use some calculation or scripting or something to figure out what they should select from in a value list. You can do that. You can make unstored calcs, or you can base a value list on an unstored calc. FileMaker will tell you that it won't work, but it does. Okay, use readable file names, or field names, sorry, so that FM can update their labels for you. Now, I can't remember which version we're on or if this is changing or what have you, but the way that this works is a lot of us devs, we have really complex naming conventions. We have ways that we want to specify our fields and sort them and all of that stuff. But then, when you are a consultant and you have to charge your customer thousands of dollars to get them an export that they can read, kind of makes you feel like, what was the point, right? So what we do and what I recommend is just, oh, sorry about that. I just hit the mic, sorry. What I recommend is definitely use readable field names whenever you can, right? FileMaker is built to handle readable field names, and if you do that, when you change a field name, it will also update the labels across, or at least currently, it will update the labels for where that field is across all of your layouts for you. If you're a consultant and you're charging $200 an hour, like, you know, do you really want to have to charge them for that when you can do this for free, right? So definitely recommend use readable field names when possible. And you don't have to, when the customer wants an export, they can just read it. You don't have to build them some other thing that takes, you know, your global fields or calculations and makes them readable. Okay, UX. Hidden windows. Use them. Please. Hidden windows are awesome. So a lot of us use off-screen windows when we're scripting, right? And so you'll see somebody they'll create a window and they'll put it at -1,000, negative way off to the side. Now the problem with that is that I can't get to that window, and it could be open and it could stay open and I'd never know, and I can't actually see what's going on. Now if you want to have that same experience but better, just use a hidden window. A hidden window is going to, firstly, it's going to be accessible. I can always open it from the window menu. Secondly, if I'm debugging, the hidden window will pop open. It will stay up. Unlike if I have an off-screen window, even if I'm debugging, I can't get to that window anymore, right? If you do a hidden window, it's completely hidden to the user, and if you're debugging, it just stays open, letting you see everything that's going through. So use hidden windows as much as possible. Yes, hidden windows stay visible. However, note that hidden windows can change the control flow in unexpected ways. Okay, so this is a non-obvious implication, so I just want to make sure that this makes sense. If you close a hidden window, focus returns to the next visible window. It does not return to the window you just left. Okay, so why does that matter? I've got one window that's open and visible. I open a hidden window to do some processing. That hidden window opens another hidden window to do some processing, and then that window closes. What window what window will have my focus now? The what?
The open one.
The open one. Not the hidden window I just came from, but the open window. And that is non-obvious behavior. So I just wanted to point that out. If you are going to be using hidden windows, you need to and it's easy to script around, right? It's easy to script around. As you go away, you just need to record the window name so that you can come back to it specifically. It's not that difficult, but you just need to know that it's going to happen, okay? So when you close a hidden window, focus returns to the next visible window, not the window you were just on. Open snapshot links. They're just XML, and with some new stuff, we might be able to do some cool stuff with that. I just wanted to let you know that's a thing. Yeah, probably shouldn't say more about that right now. Field validation. So use the native field validation when you can. I know a lot of people kind of swear it off, but you get a lot for free if you just use that, right? If you think about what you would have to do if you wanted to script this behavior, okay, well, it's not there. I need to put them in the right field. I need to show the error message. I need to ensure that under no circumstances does invalid data get to my system. Well, FileMaker is going to do all that for you with just the regular field validation, and we don't always use it. Part of the reason that we don't is because we didn't have this, number 72. The new dialogues can now perform calcs, so we can use specify to actually build some of our error dialogues. That's huge. That's huge. So definitely let's use this as much as possible. Hang on, let me go back here. Oh yeah, why use native field validation? So this is, let's talk about that. So it's more reliable and it gives you a lot of the behaviors that you're gonna have to script for free, right? So notice it gives me the pop-up and then it puts me right back in the field so that I can fix the issue, right? I did nothing for that. I didn't have to script it, I didn't have to try. FileMaker just gives that to me, right? That's a really great user experience that you can take advantage of for free. Scripts can ignore most field validation rules. That's not something, just useful to know, right? Sometimes you do need a script to create a record in an invalid state. So maybe I'll create a record that's blank so that I can then push that to a client to fill it out, right? But I only want my server to be able to create that invalid record, not the user. Once the user opens that record, they cannot commit it until it's valid, right? So if I want that behavior, I need to know this. I need to know that my scripts can easily ignore validation rules, except for 75, rule set to always validate will not be ignored by scripts. So you have control over that, over which we want to enforce and which you do not. Oh yes, use the index. So using the index is just like this. Just take a look at this video. It's just a nice way to give a simple tagging system if you need one, right? So I've got a list of values. My customer wants to build tags. I can just, okay, yeah, so here's what you do. Just go into that field, hit Command-I. It's going to show you every other value that you selected. Double-click, it'll insert the value for you, right? Useful way to use all parts of the FileMaker. Right-click to extend and constrain. So I've got a big list view. I can right-click on any field to extend my found set or constrain my found set by that value. This works in any field that I can enter, even if the field is not modifiable. So if it's an ID field or something that I don't want them to be able to modify, I can still let them enter it so that they can right-click and constrain and all of that stuff. But it's just a really, really good user experience to let them quickly sort of expand or extend their found set. Yes, sir.
On that last one,
Yes.
it's also by what you select. So if you select part of a word or whatever, and you say extend found set.
I did not know that. Thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, yeah. So if the comment that we just got here, if you select just a portion of a word, that will also work. So if you select just a portion of the word and then right-click and extend or constrain, you can do that too. So thank you. That is now 78.2. Okay.
Is there a way to go to previous found set?
What was that?
To go to previous found set?
There are ways to save found sets.
No, you have to go to a related layout.
Yeah, you can save a found set in a window, actually,
Right.
and then restore. Yeah, it can be complicated, though. Okay, SVG icons, we've had these for a while, but if you go and you get your own SVG icon, you may find that when you try to change its settings in FileMaker, the colors don't work. Well, this is why, and this is how you can fix that. Open up the SVG, find the element that you're trying to fill, and add the class FMFill to it. Now FileMaker will be able to modify the color on that for you. Track users' layouts using an object on screen with a hide calculation. So if I need to know every single time somebody goes to a layout or looks at a record or something like that, I can use a hide calculation on that layout. Because the hide calculation will be evaluated every time they go to that and every time a new record loads, I could, for instance, leave a global audit trail or do some interesting things with that. Just know that hide, this is, if you guys have ever seen, there's an old file from years ago, I'm sure it's still around, but the forward and back navigation pieces, it uses this technique, right, to track where you're going. Hold Option to insert special characters in the label. Don't know how many people know this, but I just want you to know. Right here, you can actually, in that field, hold Option and then insert something like a tab character. And you can see now I have an actual tab character next to that. I can use that in conjunction with, I can use that in conjunction with the tab stop to make accounting format in fields really easily. Just something so that you know. Remember to use sliding objects in print forms, and remember that you can hide the body. And if you hide the body and slide, it will completely vanish. And if you do that, you can programmatically choose whether you want a summary view or the full detail view without having to maintain multiple layouts. This exists. I have seen people spend many thousands of dollars and many hours trying to just make letters capitalized on a screen. So that's why this is here. Just know you have styles. So this is not going to modify the underlying data, but this will show it as all caps. And if that's what you're trying to do, this is all you need. Mini stories, talk to me after. Open quickly will let users launch scripts as well as find them, and in later versions it does actually respect their permissions. So use this. This is another feature that you can expose to users. Teach your users. All right, we got 7 minutes. We're gonna blast. Okay. Remind users that they can see find mode operators by opening this button right here. Use saved finds. Tell your users that they can save their finds and they can reuse them whenever they want. They don't need to call you, right? They can do this themselves. Empower them. Snapshot links, similarly, teach them how to open, send, use snapshot links internally within their organization. It can change everything. Functions. Use variable repetitions to make a dictionary without JSON. This is just something we did before. The only reason that I like to show this is because it's actually useful if you need a dictionary that's supposed to hold binary data. So if you're trying to hold files or things like that, JSON can't do that, but this gives you a very similar structure. So you can see here, I just give each name a number, and then when I'm down here, I can say person name, person height, person whatever, and do it that way. It's just a readable way of making a dictionary before we had JSON. Repetitions accept negative values. Know this if you're trying to build a plot or a chart or something like that. Repetitions can have negative values. It doesn't matter. Use a custom function to iterate through your loops. I definitely recommend this. You can steal ours or use some of the various ones that are out there. Use a CF for interpolation. This I've not seen anywhere else, so I just want to show you. You can steal ours, but this will make your code much more terse, much more precise, or much more concise, but also will make you help you write better error messages. So use a function like this that will let you interpolate code or values directly into your strings to write your error messages. Makes it much faster. Use the comment ID field to define the table. That's probably outdated now. Field comments are visible using functions, and the tooltips can use self-references. How many of y'all use self? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, self is hugely important and hugely useful, except it's not used everywhere. This is one of the places that it works really well, so definitely use it. And know that you can get the field comments. Why does that matter? I can define a field comment, and then when the user hovers over it, they can see the definition of that field, right? Function type ahead also works everywhere except the custom function dialog. You can use this even for get functions, but it's a little bit different. You type G, hit enter, then it will bring you the get. And inside of that, you then type the character combination for the thing that you're trying to get. So if you're trying to say get account name, it would be G, enter, AN. And then it will put the account name in there. Also works for custom functions if you use a naming convention that follows that. OK, functions with values will always end with a carriage return. Just something to know. Let's pour one out for the developer essentials on that. JSON types are constants. Okay, so all of those things that you're seeing there, if you actually look at the values, they're just numbers. Why am I telling you that? Because you can use that technique yourself. So you can build your own constants down there that have readable names, but hold different values. Data API. Data API is awesome. End of tip. The other thing to remember is it's getting more awesome, right? So now that we have unlimited traffic, we have all kinds of things like that, this is huge. You want to get on this train. And yeah, just use it as much as you can. It's fantastic. If you want to test the OData API, it's really easy. Because OData is all based in the URL, just put the URL in there and go into a web browser. It will prompt you, it will give you the authentication to sign in right in the browser and show you the results on screen. So if you're trying to test, I recommend this over Postman, right? Like this is just so easy. OK, JSON, and we're going to be finishing right on time. So JSON, use JSON for script parameters. Anybody not using JSON? No, I'm not going to do that to you. Who here uses JSON for script parameters? Yep. OK, excellent. Do that. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it. FileMaker recommends it. But also use JSON for more than script parameters. Here are some edge cases that I've found that there's really no alternative and really no better way that I could find to come up with some of these. So one of these is imagine that you have a recursive procedure that's designed to update inventory. I need to know all of the updates that were made throughout all levels of that recursion. I can use a JSON object to pass down, and each update gets updated into that JSON object and then passed back up, down, right? So that using JSON and using these as like just temporary data structures to hold whatever you're trying to do or whatever you're trying to process, or to make temporary dictionaries. So I've got a bunch of values that I need to be able to search through. I'll make a JSON object with the key that I need, and then I can quickly access those values, right? So JSON has a ton of capabilities that we as FileMaker developers probably don't use all the time. Just want to point that out because it's really important. Oh, crap. JSON objects are cached. I know, I'm sorry. JSON objects are cached in memory, just so you know. So that means that if you are going to be working with multiple JSON objects, try to parse one so that you're hitting the cache in memory over and over again, then move on to your next JSON object. If you've got two massive JSON objects and you're constantly switching back and forth them, you're going to have way worse performance. If you want to know more about that, you can find this excellent article by Selina. OK, and that's it. We have two whole minutes to go for questions. Huh. All right. Well, thank you. I know you guys could have been anywhere. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I know you guys could have been anywhere. There were some awesome sessions that you chose not to be at to be here, so thank you. I appreciate it. I'm from FX. We love doing this. Come talk to me afterwards if you want if you want to talk. Also, please rate my session using these steps here. And thank you again for coming. And I'll be here. We have a couple minutes. Does anybody have any questions? We have 1 minute. Who's got a question? Anybody? Anybody want to take it? You, sir. I'll get you and you. You, sir.
You said that scripts can ignore field validation rules.
True.
We have a lot of problems with validation rules blowing up scripts. So how do you? I mean, it goes to create a record. Record doesn't meet validation. Script hangs.
Yeah, it has to do with whether the always checkbox is set.
No.
No? No, I could be wrong about that.
They're all set to only.
What was that?
It should know what you're saying.
Yeah, generally, in my experience, now I'll happily look at your system with you, but I do think, yeah, in my experience, generally always does affect that. But yeah, we can take a look. In my experience, always is the only way that scripts will be stopped. Otherwise, scripts will just blast through that for the most part, which can cause some problems. But let's take a look. I'd love to see your system. Yeah, you, sir.
Somewhere around in the 60s, you mentioned that you have to load an entire record. So if if you put the first name field on the layout, it loads the entire record.
True.
Okay? I've always been curious about this. Is that just the data fields, or is it the calculation fields also?
It's the entire record.
And
So
does it include container data?
it does not.
Yeah.
It does not. So containers are accepted. That is the only exception. Unstored calcs will not be evaluated just because the record is loaded. They will only be evaluated when they're needed. But any stored data must be loaded. That is true.
Other than, and even a container calculation?
A container calculation. The container data itself is not going to have to be loaded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have a container calculation that's accessing an S3 server.
Okay.
So I have a calculation there, and I'm just curious if that's slowing my database down.
Yeah, no, typically, right, the way FileMaker handles containers is even when they're displayed, it's not having to load the whole file, it's just gonna load a preview of that, you know what I mean? So it depends on the file type. If it's a PDF and it's interactive and all of that, then maybe, but otherwise I would expect not. Yeah, now, having said that, the evaluation of the calculation, like that actually generates that, if that's kicking off, that will take some cycles. Yes, sir.
Keynote file going to be available?
It is. It is actually available for you all to download right now because there are a ton of GIFs in it and some of them weren't even working right now. So please go in. You can download this. And that is what I'd really like you to do, okay? So a lot of you guys here have been doing this for much longer than I have, many of you, right? You guys have developers that you would like to train and you wish there was a single place that you could just tell them to learn some cool stuff. Here it is. Download it, share it with them. Tell them to go through these, ask you questions. I think that's about all the time we have. But I will be available here, and we also have a booth upstairs if you want to come talk to us. Thank you. I appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed.